Hello and welcome to another SolidWorks how-to video. In this video, I want to talk all about patterning. We've got a couple of different options for patterning. Patterning is a feature we can add to either sketches or features that basically lets us copy parts in a repeatable pattern. So if we've got a thing with a lot of holes in it, or if we've got to create, finger grooves around a thumb screw, something like that, we can use a pattern. We only have to create one sketch or one feature, and then we can pattern it and duplicate it, effectively copy it in a repeatable way. So to start out, all I've done is I've created sort of a dummy disk here that we can play with. I'm going to select the top face and I'm going to create a sketch on it. And I'm just going to drop a circle in here, um, even with the origin. And I'm not even going to bother to mention it, just for the sake of demo, we'll leave it there sort of floating. So now I'm going to come up here in my sketch tools. I've got a linear sketch pattern option. I can select that and then select. Notice it has direction selected first. Direction one, I can create a two-dimensional pattern, even a grid of these by selecting both dimensions. So if I first come down here and select entities to pattern, light that window up so it's now orange and select my circle. That's what it's going to pattern, right? And my yellow preview shows me how. The spacing tells me how far apart to put it. So what I should do is go back on my word and actually dimension that so that I know the dimensions of the circle. Let's create it at 0.375, 3/8 of an inch. So now I know, or I have an idea. If I select it again, let's do our linear sketch pattern, come down here, entities, and select the circle. The distance it wants to put between entities is center point to center point, and that's true of whatever I draw. Whatever's the center of the feature, I could draw, a T shape, and it would want the center of that, wherever that lands, is going to be 0.1 apart. With a 375 circle, that's too small, and we know that. So let's go 7.5, right? That puts us now 0.75 apart. The radius, I could do 375 divided by 2, right? Notice now that I'm center to center because that's the radius. So I can't do that. 0.375 is about the minimum. That puts us line to line. And if I go a half an inch, just for this argument, we'll leave it at a half an inch. So now I've got some spacing. Now, of course, this is just a demonstration of how these features work. You hopefully obviously understand that you actually want to be a little more careful with your dimensioning, right? I'm just making these up on the fly. And it helps if you don't hit escape while you're defining these things, but that's okay. We can always reselect and 0.5 apart. The number 2 here tells me how many things it wants to create. 2 means it's going to leave the original and create another one. So if I want to create 5, that means it's going to leave the original, hit enter, leave the original and create 4 more, right? 10, leave the original and create 9 more. So we'll leave it at 5. That just sounds like a good number. Now, direction 2 is what I would use to create a sort of two-dimensional array of these things. So I can, right now it's set to 1, which means I'm only going to have the original instance of my circle. If I created that at 2, I also have to up this distance to separate them a little bit. I now have a two-dimensional grid. So again, good for things that have a repeating pattern. If I accept this, right, I've got a grid. These are all blue, and that will change. That will stay that way, even if I dimension this. And I'm just going to leave it where it is, my original circle. And I'm going to leave it where it is. Even if I dimension this, these things stay blue. So if I smart dimension here to here, actually, I need to let those get locked down. So except, right, I've got a sketch of a two-dimensional grid now. If I select that, go to features and cut, right? My depth of my disc happened to be 1 inch, so that's the depth it wants to go to. If I go through all now, it'll just whatever height I set it at. And I now have a pattern of holes. The same thing works. I'm going to go ahead and delete both the extrude and the sketch. So I'm going to tell it to delete absorbed features, which means it's going to get rid of the sketch too. So the sketch and the cut are gone now. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to create another sketch. I'm going to create the same sort of circle, not even bothering to define it. And this time, if I go to my linear sketch pattern, but if I click the drop down, I also have a circular sketch pattern. And notice I'm set to 4 instances already. The circle was already selected, so that's what it's going to pattern. It tells me it's centered on the origin. It's going to cover all 360 degrees. It will automatically equal space them. I can dimension the radius for things like a bolt pattern. Otherwise, it's just going to use the default wherever that first hole is placed. And again, because I already had that circle selected, it's going to pattern that. I can up the number. So if I change it from 4 to 8, it keeps them, notice, equally spaced around, right? And we can define the spacing between each one if we wanted to. But we don't really need to do that. But this is a good way, a quick way to get sort of a bolt pattern in place. So again, accept all that sketching. And if I go to feature and extruded cut, through all is already selected, I get a circular patterned bolt pattern. I'm going to delete this again. And sort of, I forgot to click delete absorbed. So the sketch stayed, which is handy. Even if you delete a feature, the sketch stays. So you have at least one extra step, sort of in case something screws up, you have a get out of jail card a little bit. So we can do the same thing with features rather than sketches. So I need to start out with a feature that I want to pattern. So I'm going to actually create a hole. Let's create a hole. Accept that sketch, feature cut. And now I've got a hole through the part. And now up here on my features tree, I have linear pattern again with the same options as the sketch or circular pattern. I'm going to select circular pattern and direction. Well, first it wants me to select the feature. So I'm going to select this hole, right? Cut extrude 3 is the thing it wants to mimic now. I'm going to now select direction 1, and I'm going to select the circle that represents the outside of this disc, right? It's going to space them 15 degrees apart. It's going to do it twice, leaving the original with one new one. Now 15 degrees in this case isn't enough. So if I do 30 degrees, and I can increase the number, right? And it creates, once I accept, a pattern of parts. And in my feature tree now, you can see one cut is the original circle, and the circular pattern is there. So this can be done with the circular pattern especially can be done with any feature that goes around a circular part, really. So if I go back, I mentioned finger grooves, the same sort of thing, right? If this were a thumb screw and I needed finger grooves, I would create a cut. I would put my circle out here somewhere just so that it intersected. Accept that through all. I now have one groove. If I select that and do a circular pattern again, select my circle for the distance. Now 10 is probably going to be way too big because of the size that I did. Let's put them 60 degrees apart and see what it looks like. So something like that, maybe one more. And we've now got, finger grooves or sprockets or whatever we could want to pattern around that circle. Same thing works for linear. If I were to make a cut and I wanted, a linear bolt pattern or something like that, I could do the exact same thing with straight lines.